Hey y'all, it's Henny, and today I want to talk about Megan Thee Stallion's Anxiety off of her album Traumazine, as well as the yodeling sample used in it and Texas Rap.
Just take a sip. Breeze. Just gotta watch it, don't watch it.
So to give a quick breakdown on the history of yodeling, it's something that's long been associated with folk music and has roots in pastoral living. So way back when it originated in the Alpine region, people used yodeling to either announce themselves or relay a message over long distances in the mountains. This is why yodeling for the most part is strongly associated with nature, instincts, wilderness, and pastoral civilization.
Loud was the voice of the lonely goat, hurdelay, hurdelay, hurdeloo.
So what basically started off as like a cow call or a call from a cow herd eventually kind of just grew into this larger part of musical expression and traditional lore for that region. And while a lot of our own personal understandings of yodeling come from very gimmicky spaces, like especially with how they were popularized in the 1930s and 40s by Western films that were like more or less B movies, it's cool to think about how when it entered a space of like larger musical expression, that people could be known for their distinct rhythm with yodeling. Because when you're only exposed to samples or really gimmicky sound effects in movies, you can tend to think like you've heard one yodel, you've heard them all, but the fact that someone could actually pack like so much distinction into their yodel, it makes sense. Especially where your voice falls naturally, you're most likely going to latch on to the notes that sound best to you, and those are going to be the ones that end up best representing you. The most contemporary parallel I can think of is singers today who tend to put the same or similar riff or style of riff throughout all of their songs. So of course you have singers like Ariana Grande who are known for their signature riffs. Money Long could be another person. She often has the same or similar vocalization multiple times throughout a project. So as yodeling gained popularity, you could essentially have someone be known not just for the tones and neighboring tones that they're hitting, but the rhythm and how they're hitting them, which I think is just very cool. What's really cool is that yodeling as we know it today most definitely came from the Alpine region, but many other cultures across the globe that had or shared this similar transhumance experience also had similar vocalization for herding whatever livestock that they were following around. So similar vocalizations can definitely be found in Scandinavian folk music, as well as Persian music, traditional Georgian music. In Central Africa, you had pygmy singers who used yodels with like elaborate polyphonic singing. It even shows up in Romanian traditional folk music and even some Hawaiian songs, which feature a very distinct falsetto style that is akin to yodeling. There's many similar and associated vocal techniques that developed from yodeling over time, but it's largely characterized by that fluctuating in pitch between chest and head voice and a really big melodic scope. On Megan's Anxiety, she's rapping about her less than optimal mental state, which kind of ties the whole song into blues territory. And that's very interesting because that's not the first time that yodeling has been utilized to communicate emotional blues. It actually became a pretty popular tradition in the South with minstrel shows, but was first learned and put on wax by Jimmie Rodgers for his blues yodel #1. Jimmie Rodgers was actually the voice behind some of country music's earliest recordings, and he was known for his distinctive yodeling that tied together elements of blues and folk music. While Jimmie was seeing some success and recognition, it's important to note that he was mainly singing and yodeling about how shitty life was back then. After all, this was like the 1920s. By age 27 in 1924, he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, and he would be dead by age 35 in 1933. But he did leave behind the legacy of marrying yodeling to blues music, which does kind of affirm a lot of the emotional feedback that I personally have when I hear yodeling. And while Jimmie Rodgers is known for popularizing the yodel and tying it to blues music, it's also important to note that he did that for the age of recorded music. Yodeling had been something utilized by Afro-Americans, particularly enslaved Afro-Americans, even years before the first black entertainers used it for comedic purposes in minstrel shows. And its presence in Afro-American culture most likely comes by way of the field holler, which was a type of historical work song. While it's similar to a regular work song, instead of it being sung in unison, it was typically sung solo, but could have a call and response nature to it, and was used to communicate usefully or vent feelings. And of course, this would come to influence the blues, rhythm and blues, and even Negro spirituals. What's really amazing to me about yodeling being sampled in rap songs is that it speaks to all of this history being contextualized in a very modern form of music and storytelling. And I really do find hip-hop as a genre to be so radical by nature in the way that it's constantly having these conversations with the past through sampling and by piecing together bits of the diaspora. It all comes together in such an amazing way to create music that's both exciting and thought-provoking. So you think about a song like Anxiety, in which Megan is parsing through some pretty negative feelings and venting about her life, and how much it adds to a song like that she would use such a simple yodeling sample, and it evokes just that history of melancholy. I think that's why I find it so cool that Megan chose this instrumental in particular to rap about her own mental state, because yodeling has always had a distinctly bluesy feel to me. But what's even more interesting is that this isn't even yodeling's first appearance in Texas rap in particular. Back in 2003, Mike Jones and Magno actually used a yodeling instrumental produced by Stallion Williams that helped propel them into mainstream recognition and also kind of put Texas rap in particular on the map. Granted, the way the sample is utilized is more chopped and screwed and very, very Texas. But I find it fascinating how the success of Cut-In propelled Mike Jones into the mainstream and kind of echoes the original intention of yodeling, which is to announce yourself over great distances. And of course, yodeling, like any other sort of vocalization that hinges on something as emotional as our voices, has more than one intention. So of course it wasn't just like sad melancholy all the time. If you watch enough yodeling performances as I have while preparing to make this video, you will notice that there is often an element of like happiness and braggadocio even in yodeling performances. It's often used to like really rally a crowd, is what I've noticed. So it's cool that you can have that element in a song like Cut-In by Mike Jones and Magno, in which they're not really rapping about anything sad per se. It's more about the come up. And the yodeling sample on that song, the way it's been chopped and screwed to really rally its audience, it works. And it definitely helps hold up that part of yodeling's legacy. I think the utter ridiculousness of this yodeling sample that Stallion Williams used helped propel Texas towards like more widespread respectability in the rap scene. And then the song would later go on to be remixed on Mike Jones' best-selling album, Who is Mike Jones? And it's just really cool that he poses that question and then answers it with a song like Cut-In. Alright, that is all I have for y'all today. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to give this video a like, leave some comments with your own thoughts about yodeling, Mike Jones, Megan Thee Stallion, Texas rap, Houston rappers in particular, and please share this video with a friend. Alright, I'll catch you on the flip side.